Hey, welcome to the Early Morning Musician. This show is for artists committed to creating in the margins.
Before their day jobs, after the kids are asleep.
From the business trip or the basement.
We get it, and we're going to share everything we've learned along the way.
Welcome to
The Early Morning Musician.
Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of The Early Morning Musician.
Welcome.
We're excited to have you. We're Ryan and Carisa Downs. We've been married for 14 years.
14 years.
This year.
Yeah. Will be in July.
Yeah. And we've made music together all that time in lots of different ways. Lots of different...
Several genres.
Lots of different
in there.
Unsuccessful projects.
None of which am I famous for, so...
Right. So that's how those went.
So now I'm making a podcast.
If you can't do... teach is what we always say.
That's what I always say.
Right. I've always said that. So we are going to talk today about the things that we learned from doing music unsuccessfully for the last 10 years. We have a band now called Geraldine, and we've been doing that project for a year.
Yeah.
And
actually 2 days from now will be the birth of Geraldine, the 1 year birthday.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
And this project is completely different from the other projects that we've done over the last 10 years.
Yeah, dramatically different.
Because for, I don't know, all the time before this, we were learning by trial and error and didn't really have anyone telling us how to do it, and just banging our heads against the wall trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So what we want this podcast to be, if you are an early morning musician creating art in the midst of your day job, your family, whatever it is that you're doing, we want you to learn the stuff that no one told us and have an easier time than we did. So that's who we're trying to find. I hope that's you. But
yeah.
We're going to talk about what we learned. What'd you learn?
I don't know. What did I learn? What's my first bullet point?
Oh, no.
I already forgot. What's my first bullet point?
You wanted to talk about
systematizing. Yes, that's a big one. And that really, systematizing specifically really is how Geraldine has happened. And it really feels like the culmination of the things we've learned, at least the things I've learned over the last 10 years of trying to make music and trying to be an artist. Emotion plays a big role in creating any kind of art, I guess, but definitely songwriting in a big way. And, it's always been a struggle to be consistent. No matter what project we had, that was something we've always struggled with it. I think every musician that we have ever known has struggled to be consistent, whether they're just, trying to be a hired gun as a musician, or, they're trying to be a singer-songwriter or whatever. Consistency is super hard because, life happens and you don't feel creative, and then you're left like, well, do I write? Like, oh no, I'm being fake. This art isn't genuine. If it's not genuine, it won't resonate. And while there is some truth to that, I think that one of the things maybe the biggest thing I've learned in 10 years of pursuing, maybe more than 10 years, if I'm being totally honest, is that you really have to systematize when and how you're going to create your art, which feels anti-art. It feels anti like being genuine. Because there's so many times, like especially right now, I mean, the name of the podcast, Early Morning Musician, like the reason that is the name of the podcast is because I write the only time that I actually have time to write, which is extremely early in the morning. This morning wasn't a terribly early morning. I got up at 5:30, slept in a little bit. If that tells you anything, if 5:30 is you're sleeping in, then you must get up crazy early. But normally I wake up somewhere between 4 and 5 o'clock and I write. And I produce music, and I started a new song 2 days ago, and it has taken an extreme amount of discipline because I work a full-time job, I'm married, kids, and the truth is there is just no other way. Like if I'm going to be creative, if I'm going to have that piece of life active, and if I'm going to have a real shot at maybe having a career as an artist someday, I have to do it early in the morning because I work a pretty demanding sales job that takes up a lot of my time. Definitely I travel. I work a lot of evenings sometimes. in the morning, that's kind of like the only time that I like for sure have. So I kind of have to say like, hey, here's when I'm going to create, and I'm going to do this every day. There are some days, I guess, where I don't. Maybe on the weekends, I maybe sleep in a little bit, maybe till like 7 or something. Then the kids get me up, and I do the dad thing. But what I found through the discipline of that is that it really unlocked songwriting for me, and it really unlocked production for me, because I found that once I got up here and like I got my coffee and I'm sitting at my computer over there and I'm alone, I'm an introvert. Once I wake up, I really thrive in the discipline. Like it's really painful for like 15 minutes when I first get up. But once I push through and the coffee hits and like I'm alone and it's quiet and all of a sudden I can feel my creativity starting to like activate. I love it. Like I love it. And you never could have told me that like, hey, Ryan, you're going to wake up at 4 a.m. and you're going to go upstairs and write songs that, especially in the beginning of a music project, no one's going to hear them really. You're going to happily wake up at 4 a.m. and write songs that no one's going to listen to. You never could have told me that, but that actually is the truth, and it's been great. Like I've loved it, and not that people haven't listened. Like some people have listened, but our reach is small. But systematizing creativity, it really changed the game, because I didn't know that place existed where like you just push through a little bit of pain, and then it's almost like you're guaranteed 90% of the time you're going to love the creativity that happens, because all the kids are asleep. You're asleep at least for maybe an hour or two. No one's, my work phone isn't ringing. Like I'm just alone and I'm free to create, and the creativity just, it blossoms. So like the systematizing of creation, like if you're not systematizing your creation, like do that. Like make it a set, like discipline. Here's when I'm doing it. Here are the days I'm going to do it. Non-negotiable. Even when I travel, I take my laptop with me. I set my alarm. I'll wake up in the hotel room and do it, or I'll wake up at the Airbnb and do it. Like I always do it. There's just no compromise in it. And it has the amount of songs that we've created. We've already put out 6 songs already, 7 songs, something like that. Mm-hmm. We got the next one. Like you haven't even listened to the one that I've been working on today. Like, so just, it changed the game. It changed the game for me. And I'm super stoked that like I figured that out. I don't know why it took as long as it did.
Yeah, I remember being in a songwriting class like 6 or 7 years ago in our mid-20s, and this songwriter said, if you're not writing every day, if you're not carving out a time to write every day, then you're not taking it seriously enough. And I didn't take that seriously.
No, me neither.
I
Definitely
heard that
not.
and I thought, that seems unnecessary and harsh.
Right.
I just thought, I can write good stuff when I feel like writing good stuff. It doesn't have to be systematized in order to be great. And for anybody who may be in their mid-20s or, early 20s that's listening to this, the faster you systematize your art, the better.
Oh, yeah.
Because it changes everything.
It really does. It really changes everything. And it's such a competitive market. Like if you're not willing to do it, somebody else is. Mm-hmm. And they're going to have the edge on you. And
it makes it really clear really quickly whether or not you want to do it. Whether or not it's, which either way is fine, but it makes it really clear to you, whether you want to do this for income consistently and you want to make it your life, or whether you want to do it as a hobby and on the side of whatever your life is. And that kind of clarity is pretty priceless when you're on this journey, when you're in your 20s, when you're in your 30s. Really, who am I going to be? What am I going to do? Discipline and consistency makes you carve that out.
Yeah, and that's really any part of life. And maybe I should have clarified that. Like that, I'm coming from the place of someone who hopes to do this as a career someday.
Right.
And if you just like to create for fun in the margins, maybe you don't got to wake up at 4 o'clock. You can wake up at 7 o'clock and get in your 20 minutes and do your art and be happy. And like, that's totally cool. Like no pressure to be something that you're not. Art can just be fun. But if you want to do it as a career, it is an extremely competitive market. And social media has made that like evident. So, people are out there really working hard to make it happen. And you've got to get up there on their level to really succeed. So that's systematize your art. Like you want to succeed, do that. And it will change the game for you for sure.
Mm-hmm. I would say that one of the invaluable things that we learned in the last 10 years is to know what your strengths and weaknesses are as an artist. In the beginning of being songwriters, I thought that I needed to be the best at everything and you needed to be the best at everything.
Yeah.
That everybody was a complete package. And I didn't realize until I got into a more professional environment that that's not even how the professionals work.
No.
Everybody co-writes and everybody has somebody that they lean on to be the strength to their weakness. But first, before you can supplement your weakness, you have to know what your weaknesses are.
Right.
Which requires somebody being really honest with you or you being really honest with yourself. And in our early 20s, mid 20s, I didn't have the clarity to know, or maybe even the ear or the skill to know what I wasn't great at. And it took really harsh, at the time, feeling feedback for me to like, oh, for example, I'm just not the strongest with melody. My melodies tend to be, if you could see the video, it's kind of like a roller coaster, you know? My melodies tend to be like really fluid.
Little busy.
Maybe busy. Little Disney.
Yeah, I mean, if you were writing like Disney, like smash hits, you would write smash hits for sure.
And my voice was kind of like that too. So,
and you were into that,
it formed me. It formed me. I can't help it.
Right. It's in there.
It's in there.
It's in there deep.
It's in there. But people don't listen to Disney music as adults in their car.
Well,
unfortunately,
I mean, if you have kids, you do.
Right.
I feel like that's all we listen to when we get in the car.
I suggested to Ryan at one point, I was like, we should just make kids music.
No.
And he was like, I can't.
Couldn't do it.
I couldn't do it either because it's so annoying.
It's so annoying. Mm-hmm. Like you get into the car and you're like 15 minutes into the same song for the 17th time in a row because your kids just are enamored.
Me and Eden listened to one song for 30 minutes on the way home.
Was it the Eurovision song?
No, it was a new Korean pop song that she loves.
Nice.
Shout out Blackpink. My 6-year-old daughter loves you guys.
Don't know who that is.
Well, she doesn't know what they're saying, but we definitely know who they are.
That's cool.
Anyway, it took some really, really harsh feedback at the time for me to get that my melodies just weren't the strongest. They weren't going to create like the catchiest hooks that the world was going to sing. And I could spend a lot of time honing that and mastering that, or I could supplement out that skill to somebody who wanted to co-write with me. And my husband happens to be imagine that, like, so cool.
We got lucky.
Yeah. Ryan happens to be a much better melody writer than me.
And you're a much better words writer than me.
Yeah.
My lyrics are cheesy. They're just, it's a cheese fest. And I own it. Like, I know that it's cheesy when I bring it to you, but I'm just like, hey, here's my pretty good melody with the cheesiest words on it. Please save what I'm making here. And you do a great job. You're like, oh yeah, I see exactly what you're going for here. Your words are cheesy, but I can fix that. You know, you wrote a book on poetry. Like, it's incredible. You know, you got your vocabulary's got to be like 3 times the size of mine. I'm sure it is.
Thanks.
And it elevates the project. You know, it elevates what we're working on. And it kind of sets me free, I think, a little bit. I can explore the words. Like, I get out there and I kind of swim in them a little bit and I kind of throw some stuff at the wall. And I feel safe to do that because I know that it really doesn't matter. Sometimes I'll stumble across something that's kind of cool or a phrase that works and we'll keep it. But then I know that you're going to come back in and fix all my boo-boos and like make the cheese go away. Mm-hmm. And it just makes the whole process for both of us, takes the pressure off because we know that the other one has us in the areas where we suck. Like, the other person's going to take care of me. This is great. And it speeds up the songwriting in a big way.
Yeah.
Huge way.
And as a singer, you know, I spent most of my 20s just trying to figure out how to be a really strong singer. And I think any singer finds that they can sing so many different ways. You know, your voice can do so many different things. It's not the case that you just have like one voice or one vocal style.
I just learned that. Like, I just learned that as we're working on Geraldine. I was like, well, how do I sing? And it was like, well, I get to pick.
Yeah.
There's a million ways I can say a phrase.
You can put anything on.
It's like too much, you know?
Right.
It's like too much, too many options.
So having Ryan as a producer, you know, which you've become so great at. Having Ryan as a producer, he can hear me sing, and even when I can't hear myself, you know how you sound different inside of your head than you sound on recording or out in the world.
Right.
Even when I can't really hear myself, I can think something sounds really cool. And Ryan's like, sing it this way. And he can really take my voice and form it to what serves the song. And I don't know if I would be able to do that, not as in an expedited way like Ryan can. It would take me a lot more time and a lot more trial and error without him. So find people who can supplement what you're weak in, and maybe before that, find people who can be honest with you about. It's super painful. My mid-20s were so hard because I was waking up to the fact that I was not very good at some things I really, really wanted to be good at. And on the other side of that pain is that being okay. On the other side of that pain is like, I can still do this. But I may need other people, and everybody needs other people, just so you know.
Yeah, I mean, any major pop song you hear on the radio, there were probably 4, 5, 6 songwriters. There was a producer who made all the music. There was someone who they brought in to produce just the vocals. They probably had multiple mix engineers, a mastering guy. I mean, there are so many people involved in just a single song. You're looking at a team of 10, 20 people. So as an independent artist or just a creative at home, identifying your strengths and weaknesses, and then finding people to supplement those areas, again, will change the game for your art. It will really elevate it in a massive way.
And I will just go ahead and add one last thing on this bullet. That's when you haven't done that much and you're an indie artist and you're making bedroom music, which is precious. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's great.
It's incredibly vulnerable in the beginning to share your art with anyone, especially in the draft stages. It's, it's a lot vulnerable to share when it's finished and you've made it as good as it can possibly be. But it's even more vulnerable to share it when it's a draft. And I remember in my early 20s, it was so scary for me to even show Ryan, my husband, songs I had written because I was so scared that he would think that they were dumb. It was super vulnerable for me. So you're probably thinking to yourself, or you might be thinking to yourself if you're not co-writing yet, who in the world would I feel comfortable enough or trust enough to show my early drafts to and let them speak into it and be honest?
You got to.
Yeah.
How are you going to show them to the world if you can't show them to a good friend?
Yeah.
For sure.
The earlier that you can force yourself into vulnerability, the better.
Yeah.
I wish that I could go back and tell myself that.
For sure. And what really, I feel like sums up that whole conversation is learning to love the process of creating. I know there are a lot of artists out there who really want a career. Like, if you asked them, like, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's like, songwriter, artist, whatever. And people I think really like the accolades that come along with being successful in art, because it does seem like there's a lot. Like if you're successful, it does seem like you're very successful in the world's eyes. And if you're not successful, it's like you're just totally broke, which I don't think is actually the truth, but I feel like that is people's perception of being successful in art. And people really, they pursue kind of the, what you get from being an artist rather than actually loving creating art. I know a lot of songwriters and artists who really struggle to finish things and like get them out into the world. I've worked with people who, work on songs nonstop, but they never actually see the light of day. Can't make decisions to get us all the way there. And that's tough. I've been there. Like I've done that in my own art. I've worked songs to death, just into the ground, terrified that someone's going to see them, lose inspiration, drop it, don't pick it up again for another 6 months, come back, feel overwhelmed, give it a shot, drop it again. And it's because I really wasn't in love with the process of songwriting and producing and melody writing and vocal production and mixing and mastering. And, that's something I had to really grow, like, affection for was the process, because there's such a technical side, specifically to music. There's an extremely large technical side to creating a song. And the learning curve wasn't super fun. But it was one of those things where I had to be like, hey, if I want this, I got to do this. I don't have the money to, pay somebody, $1,000, $2,000 to get this song done for me. I've got to learn how to do it, or I'm not going to have it. And that's kind of, that's kind of more on like skill stacking, which that might be another conversation that we have sometimes about skill stacking. But if you're going to be an artist, you have to really be in it for the process of creation. You have to love that process. You got to give yourself to it. You got to fall in love with it, and you've got to be okay with what that day to day looks like for you as an artist. Being alone, writing, maybe with one other person, being vulnerable. You just got to learn to love it. And if you don't love it, maybe it's not the lifestyle that you truly want. Because that's what it is to be an artist or a musician or whatever. So.
Yeah. And if you don't love it now, that doesn't mean that you won't ever.
For sure.
There were times that we hated.
Ugh. Yeah. Definitely times where I felt sick.
Hated doing the stuff that it took to get songs out there, especially early on when we felt really vulnerable. We felt like we didn't know why things were not working. We felt like we didn't know how to get where we wanted to go. We could hear the gap between where we were and where we wanted to be. Hearing that gap is so...
It's so easy to see in music, especially. You just turn on the other person's song and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
They're so much better than me.
Yeah.
Why do I do this?
Why do I do this? I should stop.
Right.
Yeah. And when you're there are a lot of things to dislike about it, We had this sense of like meant to be, I think, that pushed us through the hardest days of it. But I remember saying to Ryan, even just last year, at the beginning of Geraldine, I think that we're going to have to love doing this really independently from what we think we're supposed to do or what we always wanted to do. We had never fallen in love with it before.
Right. We loved the idea of being successful at it.
Yeah.
We loved that lifestyle. But do you actually love the lifestyle of creating? That's so different than the successful thing that most people see.
Yeah. And what do you love? I always loved writing. Always. It was always, inspiring for me and fun for me to write. And it was always really fun for you to play guitar.
Yeah.
Those things were, and it was fun for me to sing. I loved to sing. And that was enough for us in the early days. You hated producing at first.
Yeah.
I hated co-writing at first. I hated changing my voice at first. There are things about it that are just gross when you start.
For sure.
But if you have enough raw materials, like I really do love to do at least a third of this. And
you're doing a lot.
Can I learn to love the rest? And we did. So
we did. We made it. It took some time. There's definitely some growing pains, but like you decide if you want it, you get the skills it takes to do it, and then you just start doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. We're just doing it.
Yeah. And we want you guys to do it too. The world needs your art, and we don't want to see anything stop you. So we are going to close out this episode, and we'll be back for episode 2 next week. And if you liked this video, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Like, what do you want to hear us talk about? What are some questions that you have? What are some things that you're struggling with as an early morning musician? And we hope to see you next time.
Until next time.
Bye.